What's the most horrifying how do you not know how to do this moment you've experienced with other adult person? Every few weeks I catch my roommate trying to put his metal tea strainer in the microwave. This is in spite of the fact that our first week living in this apartment, he destroyed the microwave and had to pay for a new one because he put a metal tea strainer in the microwave. I have many great stories about my former college roommate. Two of my favorites are: 1. She wanted to make pasta. She put a pot on the stove and poured the noodles in, no water in the pot, turned on the stove. After a while she asked me how come these aren't getting soft like when my mom makes them. 2. She made brownies from a box. The box instructions say grease the bottom of an 8x8 pan before pouring in the brownie batter. You bet your ass this bitch picked up the 8x8 pan, flipped it over, greased the bottom of it, and then flipped it back over and poured in the brownie batter. My wife's entire family not grasping that you need to put water in a steam iron. That is amazing. The fact that it is an inherited trait makes it even more glorious. My best friend was sleeping with a new guy. She said she wasn't sure of his sexual history but she was on the pill to prevent STDs. I was like edit, okay, my inbox is blowing up. She's a smart girl, from a very traditional Chinese family. They never discussed sex or anything, and if I recall she actually didn't attend health class with us due to her parents opting out. I taught her everything she knows. I even had to teach her about lube and blow jobs, so hey. She's happily married now and no, she doesn't have crazy STDs. Sex ed in schools should be mandatory and better. Had a guy constantly asking what time JT is. By the 6th time I said, bro, there is a clock right there. He said, I don't know how to read it, grown-ass man. Couple weeks later on Facebook someone shared a picture of cursive writing. He made fun of the people who couldn't read it. I posted a picture of a clock and said, what time does this say? He blocked me. You should teach him. I've recently started. So far I can only tell 6:30 on an analog clock, but I've got that position hands down. When I taught students how to tell time in French, I found out many didn't know how to tell time at all. My friend in college once lamented, "Uck, I have to pee and I just put a tampon in like 5 minutes ago. I hate having to pull them out dry. Also it's such a waste." Her mother taught her that there is only one hole down there and peeing with a tampon in is not possible. It will fuck up your bladder. Took a lot of me showing articles and diagrams and answering questions to convince her there are, indeed, 2 holes. She peed while the tampon was still in and called her mother in utter shock to share the good news. Oh dear God. I always wonder about the people who don't know this. Do they think when we get pregnant we don't pee? Or do they think we pee on the baby? Time for your golden shower, Timmy. A friend who was pushing 40 had never paid a bill before. She had gone from living with her parents to living in a dorm to living with her parents again until she got married, then she got divorced and was living on her own for the first time. Got a text from her asking if my power was out too, then she realized it was just her. Her excuse was she never paid attention to the bills because she thought they were receipts and that the cost was included in her rent. Her water was cut off a couple weeks later and we had to talk about that, too. I had a roommate at university whose cooking method was put baked beans in a Tupperware, seal the lid, turn on microwave, when lid pops and explodes beans everywhere they're cooked. Edit, well, this kinda blew up way more than I expected. So in light of that, I'll share another story of his cooking methods. One time I came home to find the oven on and smoking a bit. Opened the door to find what was an entire lasagna bubbling on the bottom of the oven. He bought himself a frozen lasagna. Step 1, remove outer packaging. Step 2, place on middle tray of preheated oven. He literally thought that outer packaging was anything outside of the lasagna, so he tore away that shell that the lasagna cooks in and placed it straight on the rack, so as it defrosted it just fell through the rack and all over the oven. And you can guarantee he'd refuse to clean the microwave too. You kidding? How else would he eat them? I remember when I first started dating my now husband, I was hanging out at his apartment waiting for him to get out of work. His place was a bit messy, so I decided I'd tidy up for him a bit. Fast forward to the next morning and he comes in a little shocked. Why would you load the dishwasher like that? I had never had a dishwasher before in my life, Lamau. We're talking cups facing up, big ass pans shoved in, the whole 9 yards. Thank God he stuck with me, lol. 19-year dude, how do you cook a fried egg? Gave him instructions and left him to it. Came back a while later to ask how it went. Fine in the end, but it took a few attempts because the yolk kept breaking. What do you mean kept breaking? Well, I kept throwing them away because I thought breaking the yolk made it poisonous. Once again, he was 19 years old. Reminds me of when I was dating a 19-year dude. I explained that eating raw nuts is healthy, so he bought a bag of peanuts. He complained 2 days later that he was going to stop eating them, because they upset his stomach, so I got a free bag of peanuts, yay. He was stunned when he saw me shelling them and eating the nut. Because he was eating them shell and all. For 2 days. Surprisingly did not end well, but I got a lot of terrible sex and dumbass stories out of it. Oh, I got one. I work as an EMT for a private company, so we mostly deal with nursing homes and the elderly. One day when I was about 6 to 8 months in, I got assigned a partner who was in my orientation class. He was a little older than me at the time, like mid-20s, but he seemed a little childish. Maybe he's just sheltered, I think to myself. Anyways, we got a patient I've had a few times before. She was a sweet, little old lady with COPD, and CHF living at an assisted living. Call was for pneumonia. She's prone to this stuff, so it wasn't a huge deal. Slap her on oxygen, and keep her sitting up till we get to the hospital. The first red flag though, was this kid didn't know anything. He didn't know how to take a blood pressure. He couldn't find the medical history or medication on the paperwork, which is clearly labeled. He didn't even push the stretcher, just walked next to it with a hand on it. When I asked him about all that, he said my partners usually do that for me. So, I put her on an oxygen mask and sit her all the way up, mildly agitated. I tell myself it's just one shift with this kid. He's in the back with her and I tell him to just switch the oxygen from the bag, which is a small tank, to the main tank, which is huge, because with the amount of oxygen we're giving her, the bag will run out not even halfway before the hospital. It's about 25 minutes, which normally wouldn't be a huge deal. But when we pull up to the hospital and I open the back doors, I'm fucking shook. The oxygen mask isn't inflated, meaning she isn't getting oxygen. She's pale as shit, I can literally see her accessory muscles moving, struggling to breathe. And this kid was sitting behind her, with a clueless half smile on his face, looks at me and says the main tank is broken, so I left her on the bag. This woman, who needs oxygen without pneumonia, was barely breathing for at least 15 minutes. And this fucking idiot didn't even check. We take her into the hospital. I ask him to find an oxygen tank while explaining to this woman's daughter what happened. He says he doesn't know where to look. I fucking find it and told him to talk to the daughter. When it's all said and done, I check to see what's broken. He didn't turn on the tank. TL, EMT partner nearly kills a patient because he didn't know he had to open the oxygen tank to get oxygen to come out. Roommate in college was 22. Had lived in an apartment for 3 years prior to moving in together. legitimately did not know how to remove a trash bag from a trash can. We had the simplest trash can possible, had never turned on an oven before, and, my favorite, complained one day that their bathroom was always sopping wet every time they showered. Finally realized that they never put up a shower curtain. They learned quickly and became a pretty good cook by the time I moved out, but man, their parents really never prepared them for living alone. Worked at an on-campus store that sold a lot of essentials for students living at dorms. I had one girl ask me what laundry detergent was because she never did laundry. She asked if I could help her do her laundry, but I declined as I couldn't leave the register, which of course she was mad about. Sorry, I have to actually do my job, lady. My ex and I were cooking together and one of the pans got too hot, and we had a minor grease fire. She grabbed a bag of flour. As tempted as I was to slap it out of her hands, I didn't want to aerate a bunch of flour next to a grease fire, so I grabbed it with both hands and forced it, and her, because she wouldn't let go, over to the countertop, and then dropped the lid on the pan. I asked her what her logic was, and she said, well, you're supposed to put baking soda on a grease fire and not water, right? Yes. Why did you try to use flour? What's the difference? They're both white powder. Jesus, that's even worse than water. She almost made a bomb. Our kitchen sink has one tap, two knobs for hot and cold. I walked into the kitchen and my partner kept switching between hot and cold. Asked him why? He answered, well, the hot gets too hot so I run the cold instead for a bit. He didn't know you could run the hot and cold water at the same time. I have a couple. I once had my ex's parents coming over, and needed some help cleaning the house up to get ready for their arrival. I asked my ex to clean the bathroom for me whilst I cleaned the kitchen, and left him to it. I went in about a half an hour later and the bathroom was somehow dirtier, but the ex was sitting on the couch chilling. When I asked him why he hadn't cleaned the bathroom, he looked at me all confused and said he had. I asked him to come in and pointed out all the soap scum everywhere and how it was clearly not clean. He reiterated that he'd cleaned it. I asked him to show me how. He proceeded to pick up a bar of soap, lather up his hands real good, and just rub everything. He didn't even rinse it after. Just rubbed everything with soapy hands. And couldn't understand why I was staring at him open-mouthed. Same guy, a few months later. I asked him to mash some potatoes I'd boiled whilst I plated up dinner. He very literally did so, without draining out the water. Again, he didn't think what he'd done was in any way wrong, despite the weird texture and look of the potatoes. Have you witnessed an adult doing something surprisingly wrong? Leave a comment, and subscribe to this channel if you want to see more same videos.